The Vethkai called it a courtesy posting. That was the phrase their liaison used when he escorted me to my assigned quarters aboard resupply station. Cauldra 7, a bunk the size of a generous closet, a porthole overlooking a maintenance strut, and a small laminated card on the desk that read, 3 Coalition Languages Human Logistics Observer. Not officer, not coordinator, observer. I set my clipboard on the desk and went to find the commissary. My name is Aldous Fenn. I spent 31 years as a quartermaster in the colonial merchant fleet before the Coalition brought Earth into its resupply framework, and when Command asked for a volunteer to embed with the Vethkai Logistics Division during the Cauldra 7 joint refit cycle, put my name in because I had accumulated 8 weeks of leave I was never going to take, and an empty apartment back on Ganymede Station that smelled faintly of recycled air and bad decisions. The Coalition posting came with a small stipend, a translator chip, and the distinct impression that nobody expected me to do anything. Vethkai are crustacean, hard-shelled, gray-green, built like something that evolved to withstand serious pressure at serious depth. Their senior logistics officers wore carapace polish on their upper shells the way admirals wear medals. They moved through the station's resupply corridors with the unhurried confidence of people who had automated everything, were automating, and saw no reason to revisit the decision. Their inventory system was called the scifi net, a crystalline lattice of linked nodes that tracked every container, every caloric unit, every fuel cell across the station, and the 12 vessels currently docked for refit. It updated in real time. It projected consumption curves. It could reallocate a protein block from Bay 9 to Bay 3 in the time it took me to write the bay number down. The Vethkai logistics commander, a senior officer named Skethrak, showed it to me on my first full day with the visible warmth of a person showing you something they expect you to feel humbled by. Your kind still uses written notation, Skethrak said. It was not quite a question. I was writing the station's current docking manifest into my ledger at the time. Long habit, the kind you stop noticing you have. I said yes. We still used written notation. Skethrak translated something to the 2 junior officers flanking him. They made a sound that translated, Chip informed me, as the Vethkai equivalent of a stifled laugh. The chip called it a chirrup of amusement. I wrote down the last berth number and capped my pen. Over the next 2 weeks, the chirrups were fairly consistent. My ledger was a source of some entertainment. Skethrak's staff would occasionally drift past my workstation, glanced at some of handwritten figures, and exchange the kind of look that requires no translation in any species. One of the junior officers asked, through the chip, whether the scratching implement was standard human equipment or something I had brought. Personally, I told him it was a mechanical pencil, that I had 3 more in my kit bag, and that I found them reliable. He chirruped. I finished my column and moved on. I want to be precise about what happened on day 19, because it was not dramatic. There was no explosion, no alarm klaxon, no moment of visible crisis. What there was at 0340 station time was a coronal mass ejection from the local star, a broad, quiet pulse of charged particles that washed across Cauldra 7's outer hull, and in the span of about 40 seconds, induced enough electromagnetic interference in the scifi net's crystalline node architecture to bring the entire system down. I know the exact timeline because I was awake. I sleep poorly in unfamiliar places, and I had been going over my consumption projections for the next supply rotation by the light of a small desk lamp. I heard the hum of the station's systems shift, a frequency change, subtle, after 3 decades of living aboard vessels. And then the ambient glow of the scifi net's interface panels went from soft blue to dark. It stayed dark. By 0500, Skethrak was in the main logistics bay with 4 technicians and an expression that the translator chip rendered cautiously as controlled concern. The scifi net's nodes were intact, no physical damage, but the cascade had scrambled the synchronization protocols across all linked terminals. A full resynchronization, I overheard one technician say, take between 60 and 90 hours. 90 hours, nearly 4 days. 12 vessels were docked. 3 were mid-refit, with fuel reserves deliberately drawn down. 2 carried personnel at double the standard complement because of crew rotation schedules. All of them needed feeding, fueling, and resupplying on a continuous cycle, and the system that managed all of that was, at present, darkened lattice of very expensive crystal. Skethrak found me at my workstation at 0530. Your notation system, he said. He paused. Is it current? Turned the ledger toward him. Every docked vessel, every bay assignment, every current inventory figure I had been able to verify in the last fortnight. Tallied by hand, cross-referenced in the margins, consumption rates calculated at the bottom of each page in small, neat figures. Not because anyone asked me to, because that is what a quartermaster does. You maintain the picture. You keep the picture current, because the one time you let it lapse is the one time you need it. Skethrak looked at the ledger for a long moment. Can you work from this? He said. All vessels. I said I could work from it for 11 of the 12. The 12th, the Vethkai Heavy Transport Pathara, had just rotated a new cargo manifest that I hadn't fully transcribed yet. I had their prior figures, and I could run conservative estimates until I could verify the delta directly with their cargo chief. There was a pause. We have 12 vessels, Skethrak said. I said I knew. I said I would start with Pathara. What followed was 71 hours of work that I will not pretend was glamorous. I sat at my workstation, or walked the resupply corridors with my clipboard, or stood in cargo bays, while Vethkai handlers cross-checked my verbal tallies against physical, Tainer counts. Skethrak assigned me 2 of his junior officers as runners, the same ones who had chirruped at my pencil, and they turned out to be fast, conscientious, and entirely willing to sprint the length of the station's B-ring with a handwritten resupply chit if I asked them to. I did not mention the irony. It did not seem useful. The rationing decisions were the hard part. 3 vessels needed fuel prioritized ahead of consumables. One of the human escort frigates had a medical team running extended shifts and was burning calories at 1.5 times the standard projection. The Vethkai cruiser Shathek had an engineering crew that had been working 18-hour cycles and was running through protein rations faster than any model would have predicted. You cannot automate the judgment call that sits inside those numbers. You can automate the data collection, and then when the data collection fails, you still need someone who has been making those calls long enough that the judgment is simply there, sitting in the back of the mind like a well-worn tool. I gave Shathek's engineering crew a 20% ration increase, cut supplemental stores from 2 vessels that were below half crew during the refit. I flagged the human frigate's medical team requirements to their own quartermaster, who had apparently not been tracking it, and suggested gently that he might want to start. At hour 40, one of the runner officers, the one who had asked about the pencil, sat down next to me in the corridor outside Bay 7, where we were waiting on a container count, and asked, through the chip, how I was keeping all of it in my head. I told him I wasn't keeping it all in my head. I was keeping it in the ledger. He looked at the ledger. It is very small, he said. I said it was a standard size. I said the trick was columns. He considered this for a moment, and then he asked if I could show him the column system when this was over. I said I could. The Sethari net came back online at hour 71, 41 minutes ahead of the technician's lower estimate. Skethrak ran the reconciliation himself. The net's projected state against the actual distribution I had managed over the outage window. He stood at the terminal for a while without saying anything. The variance was within 2%. The net's own accuracy threshold was 1.8. Skethrak did not chirrup. He stood at the terminal, and after a while he turned and looked at me across the logistics bay. And there was an expression on his face that the translator chip made no attempt to render. Some things don't need a chip. He filed the commendation through official coalition channels 3 days later. I know this because my commanding officer on Ganymede sent me a message that consisted almost entirely of the word explain, underlined. I wrote back that I had just done my job. Somewhere in hour 60 of the outage I had set my pencil down to rub my eyes, and it rolled off the workstation and vanished between 2 deck plates. I never found it. I used one of the backups. It wrote fine. That bothered me more than any of the rest of it.